everyone. Shane from SiouxperCon here. I am absolutely honored to be joined by creator, writer, artist extraordinaire, Terry Moore. Terry, welcome to SiouxperCon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Shane. I'm glad to be here and glad that we're having comic conventions of some sort in this crazy year. Good
Right. Yeah, it's certainly not. This isn't the way we wanted to do things, but you know, we adjust, and everything about this year has been an adjustment. You know, we do what we can, and so this was a way we thought we could keep everyone engaged and actually get artists that might not have been able to travel. So this has been pretty fantastic as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I couldn't have come this year because I'm chasing my deadline and I'm behind. So, to do a weekend trip would have been one thing, but to, take a break is easy. So
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, and we found that. I've had, I just got off with Candy Garcia, and she just logged in from, outside DC, and so it's great. And you're logging in from Texas.
Yeah, South Texas in Houston.
Yeah. How were you affected much by the floods, Terry?
Yes, we flood a lot, but this last hurricane, it was like we never knew, really. It was just some rain for us. It really had a hard edge, and we were on the quiet side. So
good for that. Good for that.
Yeah.
So I have to say, this is, I chased booking guests for 4 years for SiouxperCon. I get to kind of chase people who I want, and there's I've now had two of my Mount Rushmore appear. So I had Bill Willingham. Fables had such a big effect on me, and I was able to get Bill to come in, and now I get to have you. So if I fanboy a little bit, or I apologize ahead of time. But Terry, I have to say this: Strangers in Paradise is the book that brought me back into comic books. I strayed away for a while. I mean, I was an avid reader young, and my dad fed that habit, like like I was a junkie, and God bless him for doing so, because I was reading at least, so he fed that habit. And I was away from comic books, and Strangers in Paradise brought me back in. And I don't know that I was your intended white guy from the Midwest was your intended audience for that. But talk about Strangers in Paradise and what led you to writing this amazing, complex story.
I kind of wandered through life as a hobby cartoonist, and I've gone into detail about that. It's easy to find my story.
Yeah.
But that sums it up. I hit my 30s, and I just had a lot of cartooning in my drawer.
Mm-hmm.
So, but nothing was coming of it. And by just going through that process, it's like a amateur songwriter. You just build up this collection of all this stuff, but it's not going anywhere. But at least you're processing, and you're getting ideas, and you kind of find your little world that you start thinking of as yours, which is a good thing as a cartoonist.
Yep.
And so I had all this percolating in my head, and I was looking for a way out of my career that I was in at the time, which was TV editor. I just didn't have the heart for it. I wanted to get back into creativity, and I rediscovered comics. I had been away from comics. I'll tell you when I quit comics. I quit comics the day that the issue came out where Gwen Stacy dies.
Oh, wow. So you've been out for quite some time.
I've been out forever. I was I was like a 16-year-old, 17-year-old delivery boy in my car making deliveries around the Metroplex. I stopped and got a candy bar and that issue of comic at a 7-Eleven. I read the comic in the parking lot. I was so mad at that ending. I threw the comic out of the car, and I never read a comic again for like 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
by the way, you've made me that mad, but I haven't thrown your books away. But you've made me that mad, Terry. We'll get into that. But yeah,
well,
so
at least
you really were away.
At least you will still mention my name out loud. Like I won't even mention that writer's name. He who shall not be mentioned. I was mad at the writer. I looked straight past the stage and blamed the writer, and I was like, "Oh man, I'm out."
Wow.
So that's my dramatic story. So I'm coming back. I'm coming back into comics, and this time I'm looking in different areas. This time I'm looking at indie.
Yep.
So I'm looking at the new self-publishing movement, all those people that showed up, all those personalities, all those black and white comics. And I'm thinking, well, gosh, I could do that. I can't do Batman, but I can do that, you know? And so I started thinking about that formatting for me, black and white indie comic, self-published.
Yep.
And I started looking for the Strangers in Paradise story out there, and I couldn't find it. And I thought, I'm gonna write it and draw it so I can read it, because I want to know how it works. It's the one story that I could work on where I would be excited to do the next page because I want to see what happens.
Yeah, there wasn't really anything comparable to it. You know, I mean, for me, local, possibly Brian Wood, which you know, it was a great anthology of a young girl traveling, and just that kind of had that same tonality. But they're really, you're right. If you went looking for a Strangers in Paradise, especially at that time, you weren't finding it. It did not exist.
No, a lot of it was focused on other things. I would get characters that I liked in a comic. Do you remember a comic, David Chelsea in Love? David Chelsea was a great illustrator back in the day.
Yeah, yeah.
He had a book, and that was the closest I could find, but it didn't go where I wanted it to go. So I felt unfulfilled. And then there were the things at Fantagraphics and John and Quarterly and the indie guys out of New York. They were all edgy, and they all had a different kind of rage to them that I didn't share. My rage was more on, I was starting to become a real feminist, and my rage was pointed back towards us guys.
Yep.
So I didn't want to portray guys as hang their head losers. I wanted to portray them as, I'm on top of the world and I'm having a bad effect on my girlfriend. I don't know why, but she'll work it out.
She'll work it out. Right. She'll not we'll work it out. She'll work it out. Right. Yeah. And you talk about that rage, you know, that's Love and Rockets. That's Los Hernandos. I mean, there is rage, but there's still, you know, again, that's probably through you, I found them, you know, even though they predate Strangers in Paradise, you led me to them, and another very strong feminist voice and empowering voice there. But that's very interesting that, you know, your passion, because that's been a resounding theme as I've spoken to people, your passion and your self-discovery led you to this story.
Yeah, definitely was something that I was pouring my heart into. So when I got to the story, the premise that I worked on for the first couple of years was that falling in love was the worst thing that could happen to you. And there's actually a scene in the book where one of the girls confesses to the other girls that I think I'm falling in love, and they cry together and they go, "Oh no, oh God, not that."
Right. right. It's, oh my gosh, and it's universal. It's and at its best, storytelling is universal. You know, I mean, you know, I don't care if you're stepping through a wardrobe, or if, you know, you're on the streets of New York, whatever the story, a universal element that we've all experienced is so powerful. It's what draws us into the story, right, Terry? You know?
Well, we're, you know, just like the same, that you could open all of us up and find the same organs. You can open all of us up mentally and find the same buttons and emotions. We all kind of work the same. So if you write from the inside out, if you write the emotional story, the human story, the thing that disgusts us all or impresses us all or touches our hearts, you know, there are very few people that are not touched by a sweet video of a little puppy. Very few people. So it's the same way with the human story. You know, if somebody has been wronged, I mean, you're just tapping into the universal experience of life. And first you write the human story, then you assign the character role and the sex and the gender they want to be and all that, you know.
Okay, so you went right where I wanted to go. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? You know, did you have this image of Francine as this very motherly, loving character who was going to grow into her own, or did she grow into that? Did you have an image for it from the start, or did Francine grow into herself?
Definitely, she evolved, she grew in the course of the story, because when we first meet her,
yeah,
she is basically the teenage girl next door, the babysitter,
mm-hmm.
who you can lie to and trick and fool and break her heart and all of that. I mean, she is that sweet girl that you better not take advantage of. Over the course of the story, by the last series that I did, 5 years, you see a very mature woman who is the alpha woman of the house.
Mm-hmm.
She guards Kachu like you wouldn't believe. Very loyal, guards the house, the family, the kids, the mama lion.
She is. Yep. She's the mama bear. Absolutely.
Yeah, and Tambi, she slaps Tambi for something.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, but we had seen that before with her, because when she finally came of age and faced off Freddy, very end of that series, you know, you saw that coming out. But Tambi says, wow, I've never seen that side of her before. And Kachu says, oh, you have no idea.
Right. So
that strength is there.
Was that the intention of her story arc, or did that happen as the story described itself or grew? No,
I always knew that I was starting with two polar opposites. I had the nice girl baby that she used for a babysitter, Francine. And then I had this Joan Jett wild character, Kachu. And I knew that they were total opposites, and that they were going to have an infinity point and then cross over. And Kachu was going to be more balanced by the end, and Francine was going to find her fortitude and her footing.
Kachu had to find, you know, humility and vulnerability, and Francine had to find strength and empowerment. And you're right, you can watch those arcs cross, and then you bring in the crux of David up the middle.
Exactly. David is up the middle, like Switzerland, and just kind of, you know, he's the one guy always allowed in the room, you know, and he's our avatar. He's how we get to stay in the room and listen to those conversations that we're not supposed to hear, which is something I loved as a writer, being able to stick with the scene a minute longer than normal. And you really hear what the people really think after you leave the room, the characters leave the room. Yeah. So I love that style of writing. I love being able to play with formatting like that, and both as an artist and a writer. You know? So yeah, it was it still is such a joy to have the freedom in comics to write the way you want to write and draw the visuals that you want to see. Right. And the power of comics, of course, is that you may forget the words, but you'll never forget some of those images. Right. You have that in your hand as a creator.
One of the very neat things that I find about the sequential storytelling, Terry, is the purposeful moment off panel that you leave to us, the readers, to fill in from our own personal trauma, our own personal joy, our own personal well of memories. Do you do that purposefully? Do you go, nope, I got him here, I'm going to leave this, I'm not going to give him the payoff right away?
Yeah, I know that my readers are mature. I'm not writing for kids.
Yep.
So I assume you have, and I think the internet has proved it, you've seen everything I've seen, you've read everything I've read. So if I make an insinuation, which we do every day on Twitter, about an old movie or a plot twist, you're right there with me. So there's no point in overwriting and boring you with my words. All I have to do is set the scene, and you're in the room and you get it too. You know what you're looking at. You know when you're looking at a room full of tension, or a room that is not right, or a couple that's happy. You know, You look at the couple next door at the next table at lunch, you can get the vibe.
Oh yeah, you know the story right now.
So yeah, you can do that in comics. And I found it to be actually very powerful if I let you finish some of the things yourself. Because, for instance, in Echo, the main character, Julie, has a box in her closet containing a vice, her chosen vice.
Mm-hmm.
It has come between her and her husband. It's caused them to face divorce. I never tell you what that vice is.
No, and that's, yeah, you and Quentin Tarantino, assholes.
Whatever you picture, what's hidden in that box is what you would put in the box. And whatever you picture is worse than I would say.
Terry, it's such a beautiful piece of writing, and it's craftsmanship at its finest, because look, here it is, and you're right. What I imagine is far worse than anything you could have placed in the box, because there's a certain part of your readership who went, nah, that's nothing, man. That was the 80s for me.
Right.
You know,
right. Right. Whatever you say, somebody's used to it, and yeah.
Right. So one of the things that I have found very interesting following your career is topical in a different way. So like Echo addresses the arms race and the buildup and the global tension, you know, and then the PTSD that we get from who I think is one of your by far most underrated characters. I wish I had the way to put that in every comic book reader's hands, because it's such a powerful story and a now story, Terry. So the PTSD there, again, you revisit, in my view, through Rachel Rising, you revisit the tragedy of that we put women in, you know, overall as a society. And then in 5 years, we touch on politics again and tension. And so it's all been a lot of fun to watch. Does the outside world influence you that much in your writing? Is it therapy for you? Is it cathartic for you?
Yes. You know, I grew up in the Cold War, and did the bomb drill practices in elementary school. You know, so I grew up, and we saw lots of fictional stories and accounts about how easy the war could start with the wrong word, or an overtired soldier at his post, or anything could start it. So we were always at risk of World War III. And then when we started getting a run of bad politics, became scandalous, then it all kind of shifted more towards Americana and all that. And so we all became a little more bitter and harder to convince, and you know, burn me twice, you know, that kind of thing. So I just kind of grew up in that atmosphere. It's like coming from a certain neighborhood. My neighborhood was always at risk of World War III and one man ruining the country with an agenda and things like that. Yeah. But at the same time, so you're interested and you start reading about it. And so I knew a lot anyway about nukes, and that caused me to read more books about physics, World War II, Oppenheimer. How did this develop? What was it like when it went off? What were the damages? I just had all that in my head. And that if you read, the more you read about physics and nuclear science, the more it leads you to math, which I'm not really good at, but I'm good at getting the big picture. So I'm more theoretical. And when I got into the theoretical stuff and realized that a lot of traditional math has ceilings where they have these famous problems that can't be solved. Right. And I thought, well, why don't you try it with the same approach that Leonardo da Vinci did when he had problems trying to understand the universe? He eventually found the golden ratio and started using it to make perfect pictures. maybe that's just how the universe is wired. Why don't you try golden ratio in your atomic physics math and see what happens? Instead of using base 10 or base 12 anymore, or base 18, why don't you try base 5 and see what happens? And then that's how I came up with Echo. And then, so I'm making Echo, and I'm just hearing constantly about veterans coming back and their
Oh
own
my gosh.
stuff.
Yeah.
So my next story was Motor Girl, because all I could think about was veterans and how do you go over there for 3 years and live a surreal, unreal life where you never know.
Right.
You can actually be behind your barrier and still be found by a sniper. Every second could be your last. And we have a ton of
Terry,
videos.
these were National Guard. These were National Guard, a majority of them. These were not, these were weekend warriors. And I use that term out of love and care. When I look at the deployed from in my area, in South Dakota, it was guys that, have a car dealership,
Yeah.
who are teachers, who are coaches. And all of a sudden, we're at war and you're going.
I got to go. Yeah.
Right.
And,
some didn't come home, and some that did come home didn't come home, Terry.
Right. And that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So I took that respect and that compassion and poured it into this character to show that this character, this girl who's a 3-tour Marine, is so overqualified for normal life, so strong. So it makes you understand that what's messed her up must be really out there.
Really bad.
And that's the story. How do you get over that?
It's such a story of survivorship. It really is.
Tough people that just don't give up, and they keep getting up every Monday morning and trying again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my God, come on.
Yep, exactly. But for me, it's also your most humorous book, which is
it's Wizard of Oz.
Oh, it is. You're right. All the great tropes are taken. It's just it's your version, but it's so touching, but it's so funny. I mean, and you see glimpses of that throughout your writing, and I find myself laughing out loud often, Terry. This one was purposely funny, and was it to offset the PTSD, the trauma side of that story?
Yeah, because I think that the stories that have a legacy, like Alice in Wonderland, these are fantastic satires.
Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland is all about English politics during that time.
Yep.
And none of us remember the details of that English politics, but all of us remember Alice in Wonderland.
Absolutely.
And today, everything in Alice can be a metaphor for whatever you want to plug it into. So I wanted to write in a metaphorical way that, like I said, it ends up being like a modern Wizard of Oz, where you dive in and you think, well, this is kind of wild. And then as you get to the back half, you realize, oh, everything here is in our head representing something. And what is it? Now you're unpacking.
Yeah.
Now you're unpacking this crazy kangaroo court and realizing that this cute bunny is death or whatever. And you're like, oh, holy crap. And that's the effect I wanted the story to have.
Yeah. Well, I think it resonated greatly. I've shared it with a couple of my fellow therapists that work with PTSD soldiers. So I've bought copies just for that to give out to them, because it works, Terry. And for not having a foot in that world, to have the empathy of that, kudos to you, because, and as I'm talking to you, I can see the passion and your immersion into things, like working through, math through art, right? And it's funny because when the tapes came out, when the winter tapes came out the other day, and our current unnamed leader is like, I have a weapon so big, it's bigger than nuclear. I thought, oh, shit. He read Terry Moore.
It's all like one big Dr. Strangelove to me.
Yeah, yeah, sure, absolutely, absolutely. So we went from Motor Girl, and then you went horror on us. You went the horror route, and you came into Rachel, and Rachel was, horror was big right there, right? It had a renaissance in comic book, and a renaissance in film also. Horror all of a sudden was back, and your take on it was as smart, I think, as anything out there. What inspired you? What drove that storytelling on Rachel Rising, Terry?
I think probably the seed of the idea was the witch trials, the 1690s stuff.
Yeah.
Because we still kind of do witch trials and witch hunts.
Right. Let's talk Bengal. Yeah, exactly. Because that's where I was going with it. If that had inspired it, watching the attacks on, and in your own state.
Oh yeah.
They stood for hours, right? And would not relinquish the floor. You want to talk modern witch hunts? That's why I wondered if that's where we've gone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one way or the other. We still do it.
Yeah.
It's just you could almost bitterly say that it's an American tradition. It's one of the first things we did once we got a little village. One of the first things we did to vent our frustrations and our fear, and we're still doing it. So that kind of got me started, and I was thinking about at the same time. You see, here's what happens: is I have these random things show up in my life, and then they're like different kinds of food lining up on a counter, and you realize, what could I make with that? So I had the witch trials, and then I'd read some things about Lilith, the famous Jewish legend of the lady who, and the legend is that she still walks the earth, and that's her punishment. So this was in my mind, and I was also, I had already implied that there was an angel of death in my catalog. Yep. So I just kind of put it all together and thought I just wanted to make a really scary town somewhere up in northern Massachusetts. Looks like Stockton, Massachusetts, but it's just got a bad vibe. And I had one other thing, and this is hard to explain, but I've always had such a great admiration for the stage and the.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up music. Yeah.
The theater.
The theatrical. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Music, yes, but theater. I so admire the working actors and the playwrights and what they get accomplished, the illusion they get accomplished on a stage.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they always do is typecast. And one of the things I would do right away, first day, is I would have my script, and then I would typecast it, and then I would have everybody hand their marked script, one actor to the right.
Right. That's awesome.
Now read it.
Yeah.
And now we've got
now the cute little girl.
Yeah. So now the big 6'4" Jason guy is a 10-year-old girl. And the mom is a big black guy, and the police guy is a 12-year-old boy. I mean,
on its ear.
Get them to read the same script, but now everything's coming out of the wrong mouth, and I'd be paying attention. Suddenly, I'm hearing it fresh, and the way I got that idea is from some of the wonderful female comedians that we have that will say anything or do anything. They're game. And I don't mean in a bad way. I mean really funny. And I've seen everybody from SNL comedians to stand-up people do it, but usually you see it in film. Some actress who's playing the role of somebody says something crazy, and she's going, yeah, let's do it. That got me the idea of like, what if mom reacted totally unlike your mom? What if the 10-year-old girl was capable? She was the most dangerous person in town was the 10-year-old girl, And that's really, I put all that together and came up with Manson, Massachusetts. And there we are.
It's a beautiful story of, again, there's continual redemption in your stories. You know, they can go to very dark, ugly places, Terry. I don't know that, I mean, you know that. I don't want to know what brings that up. We'll leave that in the off panel. But you can go very dark, but there is a redemptive quality in the end, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that you drag us through the mud and then let us rinse off a little bit. Not all of it. Some of it still clings, right? But we rinse off most of it. I want to touch on quickly music, because music carries throughout your stories. And before I became more active on the interwebs and was able to follow you, I just assumed music means something to Terry because it continually shows up as an under theme, as an undercurrent of the stories. Talk to me about your love of music and how you incorporate that into your writing.
Well, I got my first guitar when I was 13, and that's all I wanted to do for the next 10 years. I thought my identity was musician, and I drew cartoons for fun, just to make my friends laugh.
Yeah.
And then I eventually was working in club bands and all that, and recording and writing songs. But I made the mistake of playing in order to keep working, I played in cover bands and played with other people's stuff. And a cover band has no future.
No. Lots of wedding dances.
Yeah. So I never went anywhere. And next thing I knew, I was married with a child and responsible for the happiness of this child's childhood, you know. And I felt that big time. And making, you know, $15,000 a year as a club musician is not gonna get my kid through school happy. So I had to make a choice, and I went to a mixing board somewhere at a TV studio and ended up editing TV for the next 13 years. And that's my story. So, but I started off with this core identity that I've just never lost. Inside, I still wear the same clothes I wore at 17. I still have a Les Paul on the wall. I still play it every day. And it's just part of me that's never had a chance to run.
So is Silver you?
Hmm?
Is Silver you in
yeah, he's sort of my, you know, my avatar, like, you know.
Sure.
He's like a cross between what I thought maybe I wished I'd always hoped to get versus, you know, a Sting, a guy who's had a long career. He's on his way out, you know.
Sure.
That's what's.
Yeah. So for me, Strangers in Paradise is classic rock. It's the stuff I grew up on, right? It's now every classic rock station. Motor Girl is thrash, and Motor Girl is We're Gonna Get It Done, and Rachel Rising is punk rock. And Echo, man, I don't know what you were listening to when you wrote that, but I'm going to assume some really strange stuff that only is played in like Scandinavian countries, man, because
I was listening to emo metal and you know, Nine Inch Nails, and
yeah,
I'm all over the map with my music. I mean,
well, I saw you were talking about jazz the other day, and I'm a big fan. I played saxophone, I play keyboard, so I'm a big fan. So I saw you talking about it. I'm like, oh, cool, because you were talking about the offbeats and the snap of the drum. Yeah, man.
Oh yeah, I'm so into jazz and everything that I started listening to the saxophonist years ago, and trying to learn, because guitarists are in their own world and they're always playing a certain way, you know, on the beats and everything. And the jazz guys are doing a totally different timing, and they went to a whole different planet. And we have so much to learn from that, you know. I still listen to A Love Supreme every single day. You know,
Really?
I listened to the Miles Davis record every day for like 3 years. just trying to get it into my head like a Beatles song. You know, I've heard a Beatles song 20,000 times. I know them forwards and backwards. I wanted that to be that way with the great jazz, you know, and you know, I wanted to get past people like, I wanted to get past the star-studded stuff like Jaco Pastorius and get into the real players like Paul Chambers and Chuck Rainey and the guys who really knew what they were doing, you know. So I have all the time in the world to sit here and listen to it 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah, while you're slaving away for my entertainment.
There's only so many years you can listen to Doobie Brothers, and then you have to move on.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and you know, when I saw you talking about jazz, it reminded me of, you know, this, you know, abstract and all these great independent. You were kind of on the cusp. You came in, and now you look at all the Indiegogo and Kickstarter and self-published. And that was pretty brave, Terry, because, you know, your talent, I mean, you said early in the interview, I couldn't draw Batman. Yes, you could. And you could do it very well. But for you to go, nope, these are my stories, this is my time, that was a pretty big risk still when you started this.
It's because I wasted my music chance on other people's work.
Okay.
And I was never going to do that again. So when I got my chance with comics, I'm going to form my own band here, and I'm only going to stick with it. It's my books are nothing, because if I go work for DC, I'll go nowhere, and they can fire me on Monday. You right?
Yeah. So I do want to. Golly, this is hard to say, but I'm going. Runaways is one of my favorite books, and it's one that I've been able to share with Derek, and I love it. Terry, that wasn't you. I didn't feel like, you know, because it felt constrained, right? It did feel like, okay, so let's take Keith Richards and put him in Bar Mitzvah cover band, right? And still I enjoyed parts of it, but I was so used to Terry, and this was Terry.
You know what, that writing somebody else's characters is like taking somebody else's kids out to the museum for the day. You're on your best behavior. You're very careful. You're guarding somebody else's precious property. The fans are there not because of you. You're on probation. It's your job not to mess it up. Don't you dare go in there and say, oh, first issue, everybody dies. You know, I mean, you have a responsibility. You're in somebody else's house. Don't break anything. Don't move the furniture. You know, it's very limiting. It's like being on a very stressful date.
Yeah, it's again, I enjoyed it, and I don't, you know, and I don't want to disparage it, but it was just different, and that makes sense now, right? So, yep, I'm not gonna let my kid run around in somebody else's house like my childproof house, like when Derek was little, we made sure proof the house. Well, if I go to somebody else that doesn't have kids, like, stay within the 3-foot reach.
Well, and what happens is people like me with tons of wild, bad ideas, I get on the phone with, say the Spider-Man editor.
Yep.
And I start pitching 1,000 ideas. And the answer is, well, we'll think about that, or no, we can't do that, or no, you can't have that villain because he's in the Himalayas with somebody else. So, you know, there's a continuity thing. Like one time I was writing Birds of Prey, and I turned in a script, and it had, I think, 13 major scenes, and they cut all but 3 of them out because of continuity issues with the other people. And it ended up being, whereas I had this big thing going, they handed me back a script which was basically a girl fight in a dirt field, and said, "There, that's what you can do." And I thought, what do you mean? I can't write that. That's bullshit. And they said, well, you know, we'll write the script if you want to just punch it up, and we'll put your name on it. And
Jesus.
Then I thought, okay, I'm out.
That's I'm back. I'm back to playing White Snake at the Lone Star Saloon, and that ain't working, baby.
Play some Eddie Money for me, will you? And keep it down.
I have very good friends that are musicians. In fact, my closest friends are musicians, and they have said that this COVID crisis is like, this is how I'm working it out. You know, I'm writing and I'm writing, and two of them that hadn't collaborated in years, the one had produced the other, and now all of a sudden they're laying down stuff together and they're sending tracks back and forth. And we totally expect great albums to come out. My favorite band is the Avett Brothers. They just came out with a beautiful album, you know, created during all this. Are we going to see so you have your new title coming out?
Ever.
Yeah. And out of this universe, out of the Terry universe, right?
Yeah, it kind of is. I'm not leaning on my universe for this.
Yeah. So have you had these crazy inspired moments because of this, or was this pre-planned, or?
Oh, I'm kind of like just as happy as a hermit can be, because I am a hermit.
Yeah.
I mean, I live in this room, kind of, and so now I'm free to just stay here and not stop every 2 or 3 weeks and go travel for a convention, which is really not good for the business, but it's good for my work. So yeah, it's been good for the book.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
you have to be careful, because out of sight, out of mind. And you could easily go to the mountaintop and come back down, and the tribe left.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've got a solid social media presence in your YouTube channel, and your tutorials and your sarcasm and snark are greatly appreciated by those of us out here. So I think you do a good job of, you know, having a footprint, and but you're right, out of sight, out of mind. You know, it's the next man up, and it's a brutal industry. Any creative industry is brutal.
Yeah, and it's what have you done for me today? That was cute last week, but we've moved on. So you can't do a hit book last year and then make a career out of it. You need to, you have to decide, do I just want to write one great book and live off that? Or do I want to be one of those people that works till I die? And those are my heroes, is like Mobius and Will Eisner.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Those guys who just work till they drop.
Yeah, absolutely. And continually challenge themselves, right?
Yeah. You know, I actually think Charles Schulz, the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, he was back on his game. And if I was reading every day, and he went through a dry period in the 80s, but then those last few years, he was back. He had really good ideas. You could tell that he was grateful to be doing it, you know.
Yeah.
This
Terry,
is a good time.
I'm going to try not to make you dizzy when I do this, but of course, there is Terry's shelf here. But I feel like we were ugly kindred spirits once upon a time. So if you can see the bottom shelf there, that's all Charles Schulz and Peanuts.
There you go.
And he's for me, Charlie Brown represents the greatest thing in all of us in humanity, because he will never quit, right? And he gets knocked down over and over, but he never stops. And so that's another reason why I dig you, man. You get Schulz, and that's real. That's pretty cool.
I accepted an award for the people who were doing reprints for Peanuts, and it was one of the last Harveys that they gave out at Baltimore, and they asked me to pick it up for them, and I did. And the kids that day, the younger generation, had been saying about Peanuts, oh man, it's just so kind of dark, you know. So when I got up to the microphone to accept the award, I reminded them that this was made during the Cold War, and about my childhood. We never knew when the silos would open up and the bombs would launch, and there was a post-50s attitude, a philosophy that came out that we all grew up with, about being more philosophical about life and the meaning of life, because you don't know how long you have and all that.
Right.
And it's different. The kids right now don't have that. They have a different thing going on. So I was trying to explain the atmosphere that was brought in. It's like trying to explain to people the atmosphere of why a magazine like Playboy would crop up in the middle of the 50s. How did that happen? Well, it's almost the same reason why the comic strips bloomed. You know, it's all connected.
Yeah.
But the thing about Schultz was, to me, he was like a surrogate father. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I would read the articles, and he was this clean-cut guy doing this fun thing, and he had, what I took away from it was two things. One of them was just the beauty and the joy of small moments in life.
Mhm.
And then the Charlie Brown syndrome, always keep getting up, always keep trying.
Right, right.
But the other thing was like, and I've heard so many cartoonists say this about the Christmas special, was the escapism. This man found a better place to live than what we were living in. I wanted to live in that neighborhood. And so when I grew up and it was my turn, I wanted to make a place that was a better place for me to live than here. I wanted that escapism, you know, and make it seem real. That's what he did.
You know, well, yeah, so I'm lucky enough to live in the Midwest, and we travel to St. Paul, Minneapolis often, and his footprint is all over the Twin Cities. And I recognized, you know, my father was a barber. Charlie Brown's father was a barber. You know, I mean,
was going to ask you, is that barbershop still there? Is that building still there?
Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah. So all that stuff. They have statues of the characters all over the town, kind of lead you. So it's just, but there is this just dawned on me. It just hit me. There's a spiritual undertone, of course, to Charles Schultz's writing, but you know, there is also in yours, Terry. There is, you know, through all of it, there's, I don't want to say mysticism, but there is a spirituality throughout your writing.
What I call it is hope.
Okay. Yeah,
there is hope in every all of it, and that's the biggest gift that Charles Schultz gave me, was hope. And in my work, no matter what the problem is, there's always hope. The reason why the characters keep getting up on Monday morning is because they may lose everything, but they never lose hope, you know? And I think that's, if I can contribute anything to the people who read my books, is to pass that hope along. Whatever you're dealing with, there are people who care, and they may not even look like it when you first see them, but if you let them know what's going on, you would be surprised how much other people care and empathize with you. And when letters would start coming back about Strangers in Paradise or Motor Girl or whatever, I was glad to retweet them and post them so that others could see. A ton of people do care about your PTSD. A ton of people do care about you being an awkward teenager who's struggling with gender identity or sexual identity. Yes, everybody cares. Don't listen to the angry BS. But normal people do care very much for your well-being. And nobody wants to see you hurt or injured. And when I show the violence and the bad things, I'm doing it with my teeth gritted and showing how ugly our world can be. But there's always the next day. You know, and the next day is just you go back. There was, we had 9/11, but we also had a 9/12.
That's right. That's right, Terry. Yep. There's a beautiful song by the Avett Brothers called "Morning Song," and it's hope, right?
Yeah. That's the one thing we need. More than attention and respect, we all need hope.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I called you numerous names during 5 years, and son of a bitch comes to mind. I think I used that a few times. You made me laugh. Look at you, diabolical.
Excellent.
But, first I got so excited when 25 came out, right? It was back, and here's the characters I love. And then you announced 5 years, and it runs through. Was it Cigarette at the end for you? Because it felt like Cigarette at the end for me.
Yeah, you don't want to.
Never say never, right?
You never say never, but you don't want to put your characters through this long journey, and then they work so hard to be where they are, and then you come back in and just wreak havoc just to have, you know, something new to do. You can't do that. You have to respect the characters. And everything Kachu has been through has left a scar, including the last chapter. Yep. And everybody who reads my stuff knows how she got every scar on her body. They've been earned. So I think, I don't know, as a creator, you're like a deity. And are you a good deity? Are you an evil deity?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So stories begin when the evil comes out. There's always a problem. What is the problem? But there are boundaries, you know, of respect, even for a character, a fictional character. At some point, she belongs to the world, and it's my job not to ruin it. Yeah. You don't want, you know, part 2 of a famous book, and it undoes everything you fell in love with on the first book.
Bill Willingham said the same thing about the end of Fables when I talked to him, you know, at SiouxperCon. He said, it's these characters are so well established, right? And he was playing with established characters, and he said I took them to places where they weren't intended to go. And he says, you know, the fans, he was speaking to the fans, says you all were lucky enough to embrace that. He says now it was my job to not break them forever.
Yeah, right. You build up a reader trust. Especially that you even think of all the time you invest in books, and I won your trust over. And the times that I got mad at a writer, like going right back to day 1 with the Spider-Man book, that writer broke my trust. And I don't blame Gwen. I don't blame the Green Goblin. I blame the writer. And I never picked that book up again, ever. And that's what you can do by going, you know, back to them. You know why they did that? To boost sales.
Right. It was absolutely, it was a sales thing, as most major in 80 years of storytelling or 60 years of storytelling are. They're meant to boost sales. Absolutely.
So basically that was a mob hit.
Yeah, it was. You're right.
That was decreed out of New York and carried out.
Yeah, it was a hit.
And you know, look at the incredible global. The world has not been right since.
Okay.
I would just like to go on record saying that before that comic issue came out, the world was absolutely perfect.
If I find out that He Who Shall Not Be Named was a Mason, we're going down a deep rabbit hole, Terry.
Oh. Somewhere underneath a lot of concrete is an editor. So I don't know.
So, you know, here's the thing. I'm a very invested writer. Okay, so you know, Sandman was another big one for me, and so I was trepidatious when now the new Sandman came up, but it's wonderful. Oh my God, it's good, and it honors the story but adds layers, right? So much like you know, 25 and 5 years did with yours, but there are parts of me, you know, like when Patricia Cornwell writes something that's not Kay Scarpetta, I want to drive to Patricia Cornwell's house and say, how dare you? I have to wait longer. Okay. So I'm, you know, and the same.
Patricia is a really good example because that first book was one, and she wrote it full of doubt. And then she kind of found her stride. She got everybody the right age. She got, you know, and then they kept messing with it and they let her. And I remember the book where she went off the rail down in New Orleans when her ex-husband comes back. And
yeah, it was right.
Come on.
I stopped, Terry. I stopped.
That's when I stopped. And
but before that, I was very angry when she would write something that wasn't Kay, because I wanted closure. You gave me closure with the Terry verse. She pissed me off, right? Because she broke the trust I had in the character. and the characterization. So I appreciate so much that you didn't break them. You didn't come over to the, because it's a beautiful ending.
I don't want to write a lot of books that didn't need to be written. Okay, here's the catch, my friend. Is that last book, is that my Revolver album? And if I wrote Revolver, I would get Sergeant Pepper? Because
well, maybe. Right. Revolver's a classic.
Revolver was the last of that formula, and then we came back and oh well, I didn't expect the new stuff. Of course, you can do the new stuff.
Right. Is this going to be? Is the next thing going to be your pet sounds? Is it going to be your?
Right. You never know. That's what you chase, right? I mean, you're just chasing that. Okay, I did all this. That's great. I'm looking at my bookshelf. I did all that, and that's great. But I feel like I've got the big one in me.
Oh God, Terry. I'll buy it, and that's the worst part. Really, and of course I will. But I trust you. I do need to run. I have to go to the next one. This has been, top 5 moment for me. Seriously, I'll put it behind all the great stuff with my wife and my son. And something new will come up, and I'll forget about you tomorrow. But today, you're top 5, Terry. And
thank you. I had you in my top 3, but.
Thank you for being a part of SiouxperConline. I hope that the day comes when we can get you up here to Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
I would love that. I've never been up there, so yeah.
We'd love to have you up. And we'll even let you, we'll get you a drawing board and you can slave away in a hotel room.
Oh, lovely.
Take care. Thanks for stopping by with us, Terry.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye now.